Hi everyone, my name is Kwekuyok, and I'm super excited to introduce to you ArchiTalker, an innovative audiovisual series dedicated to discussing, exploring, and celebrating architecture across Africa. Our mission is to emphasize the importance of engaging qualified professionals to promote sustainable and resilient building practices, which ultimately contributes to the long-term environmental and community benefits. We also aim to highlight best practices, inspire emerging architects, and foster a deep appreciation for Africa's rich architectural heritage and future potential. We aim to educate, inspire through a series of engaging episodes covering topics such as architectural history, practice, philosophy, culture, politics, and innovative design. Our content is targeted at students, professionals, and enthusiasts who are passionate about shaping Africa's built environment. On the first episode, we seek to define who architects are and what architecture really is. We have here with us the Vice President of the Ghana Institute of Architects, Augustus Richardson, to help us do this. Enjoy the show. Augustus, you're welcome.
Thank you, York. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's amazing having you here also.
I've looked forward to it since you birthed the idea. And I think out of our many conversations, this is a good move
Thank you.
to discuss what is very important in shaping our nation, our society, our lives, basically. So, well done.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for buying into the vision and supporting us.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
Absolutely.
Talking about architecture, obviously, we want to know what architecture truly means to you. Is it a building or is something more? What really is architecture to you?
Well, to me, architecture is everything. The way we shape our societies is important. The one thing that we're able to leave is what we built. So you would read history and realize that there were such people as the pharaohs. And the only way to believe that the pharaohs were there and to get into their psyche, their philosophy, is to see what they built. So when they tell you that the pharaohs believed that they were God, the sun god, and so Ra, and so on and so forth. You see it in the pyramids they build when you get to Egypt. And you wonder what kind of madness is this. And those pyramids are their tombs. Really. So architecture serves to show who we are, what we believe, what our principles are, what kind of society we are. And for me, that's where the discussion begins. That's the importance of it for me, that we need to be serious about how we shape our societies. And you ask, is it a building? It's not a building. I mean, I take my experiences when I'm traveling, and I like it when I'm landing. Well,
Africa?
Not necessarily Africa. You can't say that. Africa is broad. There's Morocco.
Yeah.
There's South Africa.
Yeah.
There's Kenya. There's Nigeria. There's Ghana.
Yeah.
But when you travel to Europe, for example, landing in France or Copenhagen, or when you look down, I, for one, I know people are excited. I'm not. I'm not in awe. I respect what I see, but there's a certain level of sadness that also comes upon me, because when I'm landing in Ghana,
you don't get to see the
there's so
same.
much chaos. We haven't taken master planning seriously. Everybody says, oh, we master plan. But it's not just about master planning. Of course, we know that the land tenure system in Ghana is not the same as in Europe, where government owns land substantially. But when you look down, it doesn't speak well of us. I mean, relate it to visiting somebody's house and the place is a mess.
Yeah.
You won't really think the best of them.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Absolutely.
You won't think the best of them.
Absolutely.
You think they're not serious.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So in the same way, I wonder what runs through the minds of all the numerous visitors who land and say, what is this? And it only takes those who are passionate about the space.
Yeah.
And why I believe in this podcast you are doing to reach out and to talk. Because invariably, you also find that the architects we're very quiet people. We don't
talk.
I'm one of the noisy ones. But I think that the larger group of, our membership who...
Timid ones?
Not timid. The word is not timid. They are just about their business. And
let's just get the work done.
Not even just get the work done. I think it takes a lot. You have to be political. And by that, of course, when anybody hears politics, they are thinking about NDC, MPP. I'm not interested in that. I'm talking about influence, trying to shape the minds of people. It is Winston Churchill in history, and as an architect or a student of history, who says that we shape our buildings, or we shape our society, and our society then shapes us.
Yeah.
So if we are busily shaping the society so badly, you can imagine what it's doing to us.
Yeah, and that's almost our culture. Speaking of that, how would you define architecture in a way that captures the culture, social, and aesthetic significance of a place and of a people?
Well, the search for cultural significance has many paths that have been taken. Most of it, and remember, the history of architecture in this country is, it will take maybe 60 plus years. When I say that, I mean formal architecture, like in most societies. If my mind serves me right, it's the French who start schools of architecture, Louis V or so. They start schools of architecture and they try to look for people who are truly talented in creating space to be part of those schools to help shape the societies. In Ghana, we have always had architecture, mostly transient, coastal architecture, wattle and dab, just for the sake of survival. Again, because of our philosophies of transience and the fact that, we and the earth are one of some sort. So it begins to tell in how we expose ourselves. But 60 years ago, when Nkrumah started KNUST, of course, prior to that, when Ghanaians were traveling to, the UK, particularly the Architectural Association, to study, that was when the discussion of architecture became a main discussion. So forgive us, it's only 60 years as a country and also as a profession to start getting into this discussion of what is architecture and what's important. And of course, in order to find culture, it's been shaped by a lot of the shaping of the cultural response in architecture has been more Pan-African. How do I mean? There's a search for identity. It's a huge search for identity in architecture. And one of the simplest things for us to, which is a good start, is to fall on symbology. So Edinkra symbols, so most people, and even in the pedagogy at the schools, and I must say, even the early architects who came to Ghana, Fry and Drew, Kenneth Scott and Co., when you look at Infante Pim School. And
sorry, not to cut you, but did these ones come before Doxiadis?
Did who come before Doxiadis?
These architects that you just mentioned.
Fry and Drew. I think they were all working around the same time.
Okay.
Doxiadis came as a master planner to look at Tema.
Tema, absolutely. Yeah.
But Scott was one of the first presidents of the Gold Coast Union of Architects at the time, before it became the Ghana Institute of Architects and so on. So they were in the system. I mean, most of them were brought. It will interest you to know that they were army men.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, they were. The army would recruit because of the world wars. The British Empire had, its plans on colonialism, and these individuals who were army people were in the country, and of course, but they were architects, and so they were very conscious about what they were doing, and they also used the opportunity to create new architecture and try to be responsive to the locale, to Ghana. So those have started the discussions of the search for so-called Africanness and so on and so forth.
So in the responsiveness of their approach to building in the country, what would you say about their response? Was it appropriate? Was it something they missed, or
no,
it was apt?
Personally, I think what you call tropical modernism was a strong, so to say, philosophy at the time. Because the modernist movement, and when you read history, the modernist movement had started in Europe. Corbusier, Mies van der Rohe, they were all pushing new ways of architecture. Remember, this is post Second World War, and the world is looking for a new architecture, one that responds to the problems and to providing to the masses. And remember, these guys have come from that culture, but they also find themselves in Africa, and at least they need to respond and also look at the people. So somewhere in there, they are looking for the balance between responding to the tropics, unlike in the temperates. In the temperates, you are trying to save heat. In the tropics, you are trying to lose heat because it's warmer on this side.
Exactly.
So comes your large cantilevers, comes your passively ventilated buildings. And I think their response, the question you asked, my opinion is that their responses were very appropriate. They were interesting. But I think that as I also think about it, I realized that because we were not very knowledgeable about those responses, and it takes those who have studied these things to really appreciate it. A lot of us don't really value it. So there's a lot of cry about buildings that are being destroyed and that are not being valued. But I guess it's because we are still learning and trying to understand. Indeed, at the institute where I serve as vice president of the institute, our interest is to try and push the discussion of creating value for these buildings, but also involving architects and the general public in the discussion of what their spaces must be.
Absolutely.
And to lead the way in that discussion.
Absolutely. Talking about Doxiadis and co, who started all this architecture in the country, now, with the buildings that we have around, who are those really behind it? Architects? Draftsmen? Builders? Who are really behind the buildings that we see? And what is the role of designing structures as architects? Does it just end there?
Hopefully not. And I think it's a very important question that you've asked. Who are those behind this? On paper, it's architects.
Interesting.
Let me explain. On paper, it's architects. On paper, it's architects because at every municipality, the drawing that you must receive must be stamped by an architect. So you will find that there are a lot of, unfortunately, unscrupulous architects, and who, and also because we are not really putting them to task. We think it's almost impossible, but it shouldn't be. That there are laws in this country that say, in fact, the reason why an architect must stamp the drawings, that from a law point of view, that's what it says. So what happens also is that there are these either unscrupulous architects who stamp drawings for every Tom, Dick, and Harry. This includes draftsmen, includes all kinds of funny people who are paying very little money because they say they can't pay this, but they want to build. That exists, that's number one. Then there's also those who have cloned the stamps of architects. And at the level of the municipality, the checking, we've done at the Institute research, past President Foster Osayakono did research in almost 200 municipalities across the country.
Wow.
It will interest you to note in his research, which is yet to be published, that in Accra, 29 municipalities have only 6 with architects in them.
Yes.
So technically, you see where the problem is. that we are not following the structures properly. Now let me cite it so you understand where the problem really is. In Kenya, and I was having a discussion with a Kenyan architect the other day who belongs to the municipality. Says, on this one, we're ahead of you, Ghana. You can't even build in a village without an architect in Kenya.
That's amazing.
Now, when you look here, even in the city, in the metropolis, where the law is particular that only architects must build in the metropolis.
Doesn't work like that.
We've joked with it.
Yeah.
And all kinds of people are doing it. And we don't even know how it's hurting us. We don't know how it's hurting us. So obviously, that's happening. At the Institute, we are encouraging the parastatals, government, to structure these things properly, because that's how civilized society works. Ours is very uncivilized at this point.
Speaking of that, are you going to say there's no civilized society without architecture?
Like I said in the beginning, when I go to your house and it's that filthy, can you tell me you are civilized?
Not at all.
Can you?
No.
So if you enter a society, the way they've constructed their streets, their public spaces. I mean, look at Tema.
Yeah.
Nkrumah meant well. He brought Doxadis. They planned Tema. It was supposed to be the model city that will restructure Accra, at least my understanding of it.
Yeah.
It has been overcome by us as a people. And the level of, if it were mediocrity that we are celebrating in this country. Your question earlier, and which I want to follow on, says, who are those building? There are a lot of, it's good, there are a lot of developers, people who are building. But how do you check the work of those people? What is the level of regulation? Who is going around? Where are the building inspectors? How many building? And I challenge government, I challenge the municipalities. How many building inspectors are really going around inspecting what is getting built? And should the public not be concerned? You build today and the buildings are wet. The walls are wet. Somebody tells you can sell you a 3-bedroom house for $50,000 and you are jumping. You feel you are smart. But you move in there and soon realize the level of the issue. So the essence of architects in these municipalities checking these things, and it's actually a big place for business. Government has to invest in this, in trying to build a better place. If you build in a bad place, for example, or you buy a plot and you build, and your neighbor doesn't build well, do you know that the value of what you bought drops? The building is an investment. You spent $100,000, $200,000. In 4 or 5 years, it should appreciate so that you can use it for loans. So you can see the level of unsophistication of our banking system together with our building environment, and how people are really just putting money into the ground and losing. Abroad, if you try that, they will stop you. Because the neighbors will tell you, in our law, it will interest you to know that your neighbors have a say on what you build. But who practices it in this country? He will tell you it's my money. And I'm doing what I like. But you are forgetting that what you are doing will affect your neighbor. In a sense, good neighborliness. So we are not doing what we have to do. We have to get back to doing things properly, not per what I say, but what is globally acceptable as the practice. Because we are not an island.
Not at all.
We are together with so many other countries. We talk about being a great country. And I'll tell you that, one of the places, like I say, when I'm traveling, it's always, lukewarm, or I'm happy and yet I'm sad, because you see what others have done, makes them feel more human than we are. And I'm like, when are we going to change? And when are we going to understand this? There have been some pluses. Let's not be confused. Sometimes when you are landing towards Kotoka and you see, for example, Manette, one of my best examples, just even the order that has been said there just establishes some sanity. The rest of it is all, very, very... And so where there is proper setups and proper teams, those who are properly qualified to do this, we will have a better society.
Interesting.
When you are landing in Singapore, that's where it hurts the most. Of all the countries I've been to, Singapore is the worst. Why? Because Singapore is in the same location on the equator as Ghana. In fact, when you get there, the plants you see in Ghana, what do you have in Singapore? But you should see what they've done with it. But it didn't come by wishing and hoping. It came by planning, master planning, being disciplined as a people. We are not disciplined as a Ghanaian public. And we are happy about it. But there's nothing to be happy about. We are lost in a sense. And we are creating nothing of a country. We are destroying it. Today, there's all this flooding. And we compare ourselves to, there's global warming there. But that's a joke. You are not even planning the cities. You are telling me about global warming. What are you talking about? You don't plan your gutters. You don't plan your drainage. You don't plan your power. You don't plan anything. And all you do is just, let's go as it is. And people lose property. People die. The last rains that came, 4 people died. Nobody cares. It will happen again next year, I assure you. It's been going on for years. People have been dying. In America, when one person dies, it's a big deal. There are memorials made, especially when it is their fault. But here we are, we are just building unscrupulously, and we seem very powerless to the issue. We need to change that.
And this is mainly because we do not involve the right professionals like architects.
Absolutely. Not just the architect. It's a team of
urban planners,
it's a
structural
team of people.
engineers and all.
An architect shouldn't be a structural engineer. He's not a structural engineer.
That's true.
An architect shouldn't be a mechanical and electrical plumbing engineer. An architect shouldn't be a quantity surveyor. You are trained to have appreciation for these. But it is necessary to ensure that these players are all involved in making buildings for the betterment of society. What are we doing? So, it's ArchiTalker, but it's only because the vision comes from the architects and everybody else falls in line to try and bring it to the fore. And that if we speak at it from the level of ArchiTalker, then hopefully that pervades. Because once you call me as a professional architect, I will have to speak to an engineer. I will have to speak to a quantity surveyor. Project manager, depending on the scale of the project, to ensure that you get value for money. So until we understand that, we are just joking.
You are the leader, but you can't build alone.
Oh, you never build alone. The architect you can't build alone. It's so many parties, who come together to make these things.
That's an interesting conversation so far we are having. And again, one thing that's and back in school and even in training and all, we speak of architecture as an art or a science. Would you say it is an art? Would you say it's a science? If it's both also, then why?
You see, you started off something, and I'll say it here so that we all take it even more seriously. In society, and per our laws, somebody who is an architect, defined, is somebody whose name is on the register of architects. Something we joke around with in this country. So there are a lot of people who dupe the public by saying, I'm an architect. It's very dangerous. If your name is not on that list, and the public should know this, that there's, proper structures. If I have to engage somebody, is he a registered architect? Which institution does he belong? Why? Because if I mess you up, you should be able to report me to the institution. To say, hey, I hired somebody who was on your list, and he's messed me up. So society is playing around with some of these things. And I think that it's important that we posit that properly from the start. I've been encouraging the registration board of which I've served as a member for the last 5 years, and there's a new board that is coming up. That it's important to inform the public about this. It is posted, but people don't take it seriously. As an individual trying to find an architect to do your work, it is important that you check on that list, or you find out from the ARC, which is located in Ridge, where it has been for the last 60-something years, or if I'm not wrong, 50-something years, architecture house, to find out, is this person registered with you guys, just to protect yourself. Because if you don't, then there are problems. And we see a lot of that. People come and say, well, the guy has not even been in good standing for a while. So what happens? On to your question, and I think the question you asked, if you can just remind me.
Is architecture an art? Is it a science? If it is both, why?
Oh, architecture is an art and a science. It's not, artists create things that, like I create a painting, it's two-dimensional in nature. It's not going to kill anybody. Well, some say it can kill. But it's not gonna hurt anybody. I create a sculpture that people are not going to occupy. But it has the feeling, right? In architecture, you are creating for human occupation. Whether it is a space or it's a building or whatever it is you're doing. So there's a scientific part to that. You need to think about structures. You need to think about how you set up the building. You need to think about psychology, how people, behavioral science, how people behave in a space. For example, if I use red, what will it do in a space like that? How would it make people feel? If I cut out the light, what will happen in that space? So it's deeper than just functionality. Albeit at most levels and at the huge levels of poverty, there is really survival at the core of building. However, Architecture begins to come into the discussion when one wants to elevate that discussion of survival. And that whether you have the money or not, with whatever sum it is, the space is shaped to be aspirational. That is where the art meets the science. And so it cannot be just the science and it cannot be just the art. There are two components that must come together in creating these spaces that are occupied by human beings that are aspirational, that have dignity, and makes you want to wake up and go out and do what you do to live well in a good society. So it is not one or the other. It is a combination of both.
Great.
And that's what makes it special.
Great. Again, talking about architects, everyone, even in architects in good standing, there's always there's a clear differentiation between architects. Who would you say is a great architect? What qualifies one to be a great architect?
I'm not
in today's world.
Interesting question, but I'm not interested in a great architect. And I'll tell you why.
Tell me.
There's this because of the internet and the superhighway, Instagram. There's this page that I'm linked to. It's called the Local Project.
Yeah.
And it's
it's
I'll call it a podcast.
It's more like a video series.
Yeah, it's a series that looks at the works of Australian architects particularly. When you get there, I think throughout the year they stream maybe about 100 plus architects. And there are so many good architects because the buildings are shown and you can tell, oh wow, the thinking is right. So I'm not really looking at great in that sense. I'm even looking for good. What is a good architect? And obviously, in saying good, it's just like special things, like saying a good doctor and a bad doctor. And let me relate it from medicine before I come to architecture. In every pursuit of knowledge, there are tenets that one must follow in becoming. If you go to a doctor who doesn't diagnose you well and gives you wrong medicine, will you call him a good doctor?
Not at all.
Excellent. So in the same way, when you go to an architect who doesn't do the job of analyzing your issues, visiting the site. You have architects who never visit a site. You take your site plan,
and they just begin to draw.
And that's it. And you wonder, what is this guy trying to create? What is the message? And a lot of the public also don't know how to procure good architecture. The question is, ask the guy, what is this about? Tell me what it is about.
Yeah.
And it's not just putting spaces together and creating funny functional relationships that don't work. So it's really about people responding properly and creating things that work for the very people that they are dealing with.
Just to throw more light on what you just said, in a question back to you. I'm this guy who just has managed to work hard. I get money and now I want to build. I don't know any architect. I don't have friends who are architects and all. You spoke about the fact that in procuring an architect, you need to find out their good standing in the institute and all that. How do I find a good architect? Especially in a country like Ghana.
Very, very easy. And now you put it right at my doorstep. The Institute of Architects is located in a place called Architecture House. It's in Ridge. It shares a wall with the Apex Bank in Ridge. If you know Passport Office, just go down that lane. You can't get lost. Today, you can put in Apex Bank, and I'm just telling you, it's a building right next to it. Apex Bank is bounded by 2 roads and one property on the other side, which is an apartment building. The other property is where the Institute of Architects and the ARC is. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, I don't know where to find an architect, but I think it's rather dubious. It's not because you don't know where to find an architect. It's because you don't want to procure an architect to do your job.
Interesting.
You want to be smart. You want to be cheap. That is the truth.
Yeah.
If we have to be truthful, that is what is going on in our society. But you see, there's a statement that you could be penny wise and pound foolish. There are people who've gone to school for 6 years to train and have done an additional 2 years in pupillage to become registered architects.
Some even 3.
some 3. I'm using the most minimum numbers.
Yeah.
Even school can be longer years. It's a very rigorous course. If you have the money and you want to do the right thing, then go to these people. Of course, I think the biggest problem that we are not discussing is what the fee of the architect is. And a lot of people say, they're going to charge you such a large sum for whatever it is. I think that architects are one of the fairest people I know. And I explain it. I, for one, I charge mostly in percentages. If you read the law, it's percentages, lump sum, time charges, depending on the type of job.
I wouldn't want you to go into details because there's another episode where we are definitely going to discuss all that. So today, let's stick to defining what architecture is.
I get it, but I'm just trying to make the point that people shouldn't make the excuse that they can't find architects.
Yeah.
That is an
same way you can make an excuse of not finding a doctor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have to go to the right place.
Yeah.
If you have a serious problem, you even go to a local doctor and it's not working. You are referred to Kolebu. Everybody knows, but that is life and death.
Yeah.
It's easy to find a lawyer to sort your issues out because that one you are going to prison. Exactly. But when it comes to architecture, everybody feels we can just mess up. The painful part is you hire somebody who really doesn't know what to do, and they start building and they don't do something like your damn-proof course. And you build. The building seems okay, but you built in a heavily waterlogged area.
Yeah.
Your building will never make it. It will always, the walls will keep frothing.
Yeah.
It will get destroyed.
Yeah.
You've invested a lot of money for what?
And that's not value for money.
What is that? Well, how is that value for money? Because it will come to a time to sell the building.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to buy it.
Never.
Knowing what I know.
The value depreciates.
I just tell you, forget it. I mean, you've lost what you know. So it just sits there, and it becomes really bad. So beyond the issue of water, there's more. There's so much more.
Yeah.
Buildings that are not properly ventilated. Buildings that exercise sick building syndrome. These are things people don't know. But like I said, there's a psychology and a science to the issue of building. And you have to understand that people go to school for this purpose. And it's not about the amount of money. You need to sit with people to have proper discussions and ensure. I mean, the one that's even more worrying is how, so-called Christian and religious we are. And yet we don't take the right paths to do things. And I'm not talking about illiterate people. I'm talking about even doctors, lawyers, who, when it's time to build their houses, they even select draftsmen just because it's the issue of money. So I posit very clearly that it's not because they don't know where the institute is. I've just given them the address. It is because they are cheap. Yeah. And anybody can come to me.
And you're not aiming to seek for truth.
Not truth necessarily. I won't use truth. Just cheap.
Cheap?
Because you want to be cheap. But like I said, penny wise, pound foolish. You will pay eventually in the process. You may not pay today, but you'll pay later. So it's important that people just realize that there's a principle to go to the professionals, to go to those, and again, let's go to the Bible. It says, study to show yourself approved. Why does the Bible say that? Because if you have to be a photographer, if you have to be a DJ, whatever it is you have to do, you need apprenticeship. You need qualifications.
That's because a process.
Look, MCs, right? You want to have an MC. And here I will hype Jerry Adrololo. Jerry is
amazing.
Through and through. You can't ask me to be an MC. I will do a poor job. It's not my job. It's a professional thing. It's something that people study to bring value. So in the same way, why would I not bring value? I mean, look at the number of churches that are being designed in this country. A lot of them don't really. They don't even exude the spirituality they're about.
God.
Exactly. So then it begins to question, what exactly are we doing? Proper society must do the right thing. That's what I'm positive.
I mean, with all this that you've said, it takes me to my next question, something that we want to understand. I know you've spoken about society and who we are based on architecture and all that. I want us to understand, help us understand how architecture influences our daily life as a community and as a nation. How it affects our national identity as a people. How architecture affects.
What is our identity? And that's where maybe I'll start from. When things are crooked, it's okay, it's Ghanaian. It can be accepted. When you build something and it's built very well, so let's go historically, especially when it comes to the World Cup. People say the German machine. And it's because the Germans have, through time, establish themselves as perfectionists.
Mm.
So Benz, BMW, and even their football is very technical. It's very sharp, very well calculated.
Yeah.
This is not something that say Germans were born with. It's something that they have acquired as culture. And the best thing that you know is that culture is dynamic. So as we continue, do we also show that dynamism? Or what is accepted as Ghanaian? We will accept Ghanaian to be filth, dirt. Is that it?
No.
When you drive around our cities, there's so much dirt in the streets. There's so much, it's unbelievable. It's difficult for anybody who knows about the built environment, and even who doesn't, to live in these spaces, because you are driving by the main road and there are weeds everywhere, there's litter everywhere. The various cleaners are doing it, but we are not very serious. So the question is, how do we affect our societies? How do we create places for people to grow properly? You travel, people can go to the park, go and relax on a Sunday. Here, next door, there's a church that's banging loud noise to you. The space, I remember many years ago when I stayed in East Legon, there was a plot right next to where we were, and they put up a signboard that it was going to be an international school. I don't want to embarrass the people. The next thing we saw, it had become houses. Oh yeah, and churches bought, proprietors of churches bought houses in that estate. Wow. And then you wonder, what is going on here? Because you need places for recreation. You need places for people to de-stress. Yeah. We don't even realize that. So the level of mental health issues is rising in this country because there are no oases. There are no places for relaxation, for pondering. Meanwhile, when you travel, a lot of the time, just walking through the cities and getting to the squares and the open areas where there's ice cream, people are playing.
It's refreshing.
It's very refreshing.
It takes a lot out of you.
It takes a lot of stress from you, right? Yeah. So you don't complain as much. Yeah. Do we not deserve that?
We do. Absolutely, we do.
We deserve that. So it's important that we get it right. And that is the part that it plays in creating society. Planting trees. Today, if you look at Ridge, which is what the British started, cantonments. Of course, we are destroying cantonments a lot now. We're cutting down all the trees. And we are densifying also. There's a policy in our code that says we should plant trees. But when you go to East Legon, where are the trees? Do you see the trees? People even give you excuses that there'll be mosquitoes and all kinds of funny stuff. And when the place floods, you don't understand. What are you talking about? I mean, the trees have a role.
Yeah, and there are even mosquito repelling plants and all. So absolutely. It's just the education, the knowledge that people are missing.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah. So now, in talking about all these, right, you need the right people to get us done, design it to make our spaces livable and then effective, functional. Can anyone be an architect? Does it require a specific calling or a talent?
Why not? Everyone can be an architect, because what are the ingredients of, I said can be, but there's a path to everything. Okay. The ingredients for architecture are creativity. And unlike most people who think that it's just about being able to draw and to sketch or to create artistic things, that's not really it. It is part of it. Your ability to think mathematically or scientifically is also part of it, because remember we said it's an art and a science, so there's a certain mix. In Ghana, there's a path to becoming an architect. So you'll find out that most people, and I'm using you, will go to school. And then you will have to maybe do maths, physics, chemistry, or do art. You can even do business, accounts, whatever it is, as you know. But you need to pass to a certain grade to be considered to go to architecture school should you make the choice. After that, you go on, if you are going to KNUST, which is my alma mater, to do 4 years for the Bachelor of Architecture. And then after that, you do 2 years postgraduate, which is a master's in architecture. After that, you are still not an architect.
Not at all.
After that, you have to do 2 years studying as an architect. You register to the institute, write an exam, and then eventually get, called up to become an architect and put on the register of architects. This is the path.
Yeah.
In Central University, you do 5 years straight, which is like the American system. The KNUST runs like the British system, part 1, part 2, part 3. But you do 5 years. And
Yeah, I did 5 years.
You did 5.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you do 5 and then you do 3 years working in an office and then you write the exam. It still computes to the same 8 years, right?
Yeah.
And then
8 years.
It's 8.
8.
Yeah,
That's a long part.
Public went blue. You start in around 18 if you did school regularly. If you didn't, then you're 21. Then add 18, and then you become registered as an architect, having gone through all the rudiments.
Yeah.
Now, the truth of the matter is, there are those who I believe have the knack for it, who seem to be called. But it's not just about a calling. You have to get there and you have to hallow yourself to study what it takes. Because like I said, there's no clear blueprint.
Yeah.
It's a mixture of art and science, and you need to go through pedagogy to get to that point. Yeah. So I won't make it an issue of talent. Because even if you have the talent, you have to put in the hard work. Yeah. Right? So you really, anybody can do it once you choose the path. That said, though, I'm also on the path of pushing that we as a society begin to look at how we shorten that process a bit by improving education. What do I mean? In advanced society, and when I say that, I mean the West. In the US, for example, the UK today, they are considering very strongly to do away with the first degree in architecture. But you see, when you hear that, you're excited. In the US, without having done an architecture first degree, you can actually become an architect. Yeah. Because you have to do a 3-year course, and it is one of the most rigorous courses you can imagine. It's forcing everything in 3 years. It's very deadly. And so if we want to do that as a society, then we may need to look at that seriously in our educational courses and make sure that, because I've seen people who've been disenfranchised in becoming architects in the first degree. They only realize after the first degree that they really have a knack for this. So then, in order for them to study to show themselves approved, then maybe schools of architecture, which they're only to Central University and KNS, as of now, I'm hoping that there's joined the fray. Can then now begin to put up courses similar to what is done in the UK, similar to what is done in the US, to ensure that a larger number of people can participate in this discussion of creating a space. As of now, we have such a small number of architects in this country. On paper, including the dead, we are 1,300 registered. But if you remove the dead, you remove pensioners and all of that, really safely, I don't know, maybe we're sitting at about 900 or 800 or so.
And that's,
this is just my opinion.
And that's also is a problem, I think, because looking at the population that we have, that's a small fraction of architects serving that number of.
No, I don't think it's a problem.
Shouldn't. Why so? Why isn't it?
We should definitely increase the numbers, but it's not about the number of architects. It's just about an indisciplined society. Architects can handle the work that is given to them, and they should do the right thing.
Interesting. Architects. People say we just draw plans. What are some of the misconceptions about architects that needs to be debunked, needs to be clarified?
We don't just draw plans. So again, very interesting question, but let me relate it to, would you call a nurse a doctor?
Never.
Okay. Why wouldn't you call a nurse a doctor?
That's not what she's trained for.
Not just what she's trained for. If you go to the hospital, she would nurse your sores. She will give you the drugs that have been prescribed, come to your bedside and do that. Does that make her a doctor?
No.
Obviously not. The doctor will come in his white robe as usual, check your pulse, read the monitor, and through his knowledge, he'll be able to deduce that it's not this, but it's B that's affecting your system. So there's a certain knowledge that is brought from there. In the same way, the architect is somebody who's been trained in the thinking of space, in things that you may not even consider. So you come up with a brief, I want a 4 or 5 bedroom house, but you've forgotten that 4 or 5 bedroom house on the market, hiring a proper contractor, and then pouring proper concrete and doing the right thing will cost you, give or take, maybe $200,000, $300,000, depending on what your specs or your details are. That person has to do the work of guiding you through that process. It's not a very simple process. So you really get to that point where the architect is actually somebody who's been trained to really look at all the aspects before you make certain decisions. And if only you go through that path, I mean, I can assure, maybe ArchiTalker, I would suggest we'll interview people who've used architects and people who've not used architects and see how they feel about it. I think so that they really tell us the difference.
The difference.
Because at least I know that those who use architects are benefiting.
Yeah.
In my own experience, people who use architects to do their commercial projects are benefiting in a big way. They make very good money.
Yeah, just to chip in, I know you are the man behind Alisa Hotel Tema, and I think you can speak to that better given the experience that you have with the client and the building and the returns that it's giving the clients now. Would you like to throw some highlights on that?
Oh, well, you're going to invest in a hotel, and you have to understand what people are looking for in hotel business. You are going to invest, give or take, between $10 and $30 million, depending on what size of hotel.
Yep.
Or even more in some cases, depending on whether it's a 3, 4, 5-star, so on and so forth. You have to do it well. I mean, in Alisa, I'm happy for the opportunity that was granted to me by the
Amazing
client.
Job done. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You deserve the credit.
Thank you. Thank you. We continue to try. But you see, our interest is to ensure that the client's brand is strong. When it is strong, people will flood there, as they are doing in Tema now. They go a lot to Tema. They love the place. And when we're doing it, we're thinking about the people of Tema. We're saying Tema was the light that was put up by Nkrumah to change Accra. Some had the opinion that we shouldn't build something as good as that in Tema. But I said, no, Tema is a port city. And the people of Tema, as I've known, are one of the very interesting people in this country, very business oriented, and deserve the best.
Tema boy.
There you go. So it was starting from respecting people, respecting the brand, and saying, what can Alisa give to the people of Ghana that will make them dignified, let them have their own space where they can express themselves. And that's what Tema is about. Yeah. It is not shocking, therefore, that people love the brand and that he's going on to expand the brand and so on and so forth. So if you hire somebody who understands that backdrop very well, then obviously you're going to make good business. I'm not saying Alisa wasn't making good business already, but lucky for us, it was in Tema. I must say we are blessed to be working now also on Accra for another 80 bedroom that is coming. And we want to continue to assist the brand to make benefits. On the other hand, on the holiday, I traveled out of town. Again, I won't mention location just because of protecting people. And somebody who had a beachfront totally bastardized the opportunity there. And he's struggling with sales. You would have put in millions.
Yeah.
The essence is that those millions should make you back millions. So if it's not doing that, it only becomes a very sad prospect at the end of the day. And I think the public is losing. There is a value to getting an architect in the discussion.
Interesting. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge facing architects in Africa today?
The biggest challenge, there are a number of challenges. I think and I won't talk about architects necessarily, but the profession. Because you see, a lot of people have children who say, well, we want to do architecture. Like I said, it's a calling. You can be the wealthiest person, but your son or daughter will say, I have this creativity in me, I'd like to express myself in the landscape and so on and so forth, and create buildings that people will occupy. Yep. So you soon realize that the challenge is on so many fronts. We speak about Africa, but the education of architecture needs to be focused on, because the operative word of Africa today is build. We're trying to build Africa. In fact, most people say Africa is it the last frontier, hopefully. But you need to create these societies properly. It means that we need a lot of architects, a lot of creatives in shaping what this society becomes. So it's a big challenge with the pedagogy. One of the big problems I have with the pedagogy today is a lot of Ghanaians, a lot of Nigerians, and those who really want their kids to study architecture to the highest level have to spend a pretty back sending them to Ivy League schools or schools in North America and the UK so far as building is concerned. What's happening with our institutions, and that's one of the problems. So I'm starting from
the basics,
from the basics. You know,
the roots of it.
Is that some of those schools, to attract the best talent to teach, you must pay well. People must have the right qualifications and must have the right pedigree to come to the schools to teach. Unfortunately, because of the economic problems in Africa, you don't really attract the best, because money is what attracts. You need to pay people well for that level. And we can't really pay very good teachers of the profession. And that affects those who are being trained and so on. And that's why it's a total food chain, that students must do school and the lecturers are doing their best to try and still pump in the principles, but you must also intern when you come out to work with others in the industry to learn on your path to grow. We must survive in that sense. So it starts from the educational investment, and I think more of it should happen in architecture. But the problems also come, you know, when you come out with payment regimes, right? So you come out as an architect, and after putting in the 8 years I talked about, some cases, even some of the colleagues even earn far less than somebody who spent 2 years doing something else. It doesn't make sense. And again, it's almost like that kind of situation where we don't value intellectual property. We don't. So that is affecting, because architecture is a very intellectual set of a profession, and it's affecting the payment of these architects. So it's forcing architects to become both referee and player. One of the big problems we keep discussing about architects taking on, you know, design build. It's a new method of procurement, but it has to be understood properly as it was set up. Most of the entities that do it well will introduce the architect, but will also introduce the other team members. And even though you do pay the architect, there are people responsible and who have the insurances to protect the client should something happen. That's not happening because the public doesn't want to pay well. The architects also have to take care of their families after studying for all those years. So what is it creating? It's a very bad situation for us. I think that also the governments and the way we've structured play a lot into corrupt practices. I don't blame them totally, because you see, our governmental systems have pushed us into this place. This democracy we have embraced, which we don't mutate properly, makes a lot of people who go into the streets and shout feel that they deserve to be the ones doing this and to be doing that. And so the more noise you make, the more you find yourself in places of power, which shouldn't be the case. You should select those who are properly qualified to do the work. And that's not just an architecture problem, that's a national problem. But I think these all, from that education to the issues of, you know, it's affecting the profession as a whole.
These are a lot of challenges that you've highlighted on, and I think it's important that we understand it, and will make us practice well, will make us a better people in the nation also. How do you see the role of young interns and emerging architects in shaping the future of African architecture?
I have a lot of hope for the young ones. I myself have interned to date, and if I'm not wrong, 253 students of architecture in the last 18 years. And it's something that I'm very excited about. And I continue, just next week, there are 3 new, now even they come when they are 16, when they are in secondary school, deciding to do architecture, they come to, their parents send them for a month to intern, to see what it is we do, so they know where they're going and what it's going to be about. So I think that the capital is in the youth. However, the youth must be trained. And I think that the youth must also want to be trained. And they must want to serve their time. I know we are in the time of fast. Everything is fast.
We are avoiding the process.
Well, I mean, this is a profession that doesn't happen overnight. You need to put in the work. You need to, you're going to sacrifice a lot. You're going to have to work under people. I'm not happy about the way, you know, firms are structured. And I think, you know, it was a lawyer friend of mine who was talking about the evolution of the architectural practice, just as what do we call it? A law firm and a firm of lawyers. You know how today it's moved from a firm of lawyers to a law firm, and just that evolution in building larger entities that have the capital to create better livings for the young. The young are not able to stay in firms because of the struggle of payment to firms. Firms cannot maintain a good salary. So eventually, when they finish their exams, they have to move on to survive because they are getting married. They have kids, and your CEO cannot keep paying you. I don't know a firm in the country that yet pays 20,000 cedis a month to an architect.
I believe you will do that soon.
I'll do what?
You will pay that soon.
What, the 20,000?
Yes.
I'm not doing that yet, I hope. No, I'm just trying to establish that when you do run your own entity, you soon realize that you can't promise what you don't have, right? You get paid, and you have to manage that runway for months.
That takes us back also to the challenges facing architects in this country.
Absolutely.
Once you are not making the good amount of money, the fees are being, tweaked here and there by clients, reduce it there and that. Then you also can't run the office properly. Absolutely. You cannot pay the interns or the working architects.
Absolutely, and this is where you need, government has been very supportive, but we don't, the laws are there, like I always say, but the implementation of it hasn't been the best. So the young guys are struggling. Because technically, if you're a registered architect, and what the institute does is to prescribe minimum fees for procuring architects. If we don't abide by that, then it becomes a jungle, which is what it is. Anybody goes anywhere. I need to feed my family, and I'll take whatever it takes, and I'll render whatever.
Really noted that down for another episode where we talk about the charges and all, because you sometimes there are people who even present the standards that has been set by the government, and then the first, hey, what is this? Reduce it and all. These are things that we also need to talk about, that people can embrace architects and then engage them properly.
Absolutely.
So, of course, I'm going to get you back here on to talk about that.
You owe me a lot of money.
That's not a problem. Yeah. So, again, we've spoken about culture so much because I believe it's integral in architecture. How important is the cultural context in defining what architecture should be?
Look at Asia. Look at China. Look at Japan. Look at Dubai. I think culture is like, maybe as I think about it on my feet, the way we look. Let me explain. When you see a Chinese, you don't have to be told. How do you know it's Chinese?
Structure, face.
Good. Language, the way they speak. So on and so forth. It gets difficult in certain places, but there are nuances. If I see a Maasai jumping, I know it's Kenya. Right?
Yeah.
So we have things that make us who we are, that define us. And so culture is very important in trying to locate buildings. Of course, in architecture, when you study, you realize there's something called the international style. And the international style can be proliferated in so many countries. So the modernist movement started that whole discussion of really, throwing away the lines between separations and so on and so forth. But you find out that people travel to places because of experiences. And so we need to look at what's good here and how do we enhance what's good here. What is the brand Ghana? And I recently did an exercise with a couple of students on one of the projects we're doing, trying to find out what is Ghana. And it was interesting, the number of things that came out in trying to define us. And it is from those things that we now begin to create an architecture, something that will let people travel from everywhere in the world to that
to come and see
location. You will go to France to see the Eiffel Tower.
Absolutely.
If you copy the Eiffel Tower in Ghana, it's a copy. Who wants to come and see it? The Hagia Sophia has been given to us by the Turkish government in Lima. But I can assure you it doesn't receive that level of visitors. People still travel to Turkey to go and visit the Hagia Sophia.
It's not in us.
In Barcelona, you have the Sagrada Familia, which is still ongoing. Will finish in 2050. It receives almost 15 million visitors, if I'm not wrong, a year, who pay to go and visit a building that is still in construction by Antonio Gaudi. Again, the power of architecture. So we must understand culture. We must understand the nuances of the individuals in creating society and investing in society, so that people just say, I just want to be in Ghana. We have a lot that's going on well for us in Ghana. I mean, even without all of that. But also with all of that, look at all this return, the return to, what do you call it? Return of the returnee series. The year of the return. The year of the return. Yeah. Because of our history in being the leader in independence, Kwame Nkrumah, the various monuments that were built, the Independence Arch, the Independence Square, the Akosombo. People travel
to come see it.
Just to come and see it.
Yeah.
So if we don't concentrate on culture and not just relating it to, I mean, people go all the way to Kumasi to Menchia because of tourism and because of what it is. So if we can enhance that, not in the past, but look at where it stands in the past, in the trajectory in the future, we will be able to create uniqueness that people come here to eat cuisine, food. And I traveled a bit. The best food is my country's food. The Ghanaian food is just something else. You know, you look forward to London and just going to eat wache or to go and have fufu. You know, at your best location. Living room is mine.
I love living room.
Living room is,
and again,
excellent brand. Excellent brand.
And again, look at, you know, they've relocated.
Yes.
And the new location, he doesn't just seek people to come and eat good food.
He's playing music now.
And what I love about the place is also the design.
Absolutely.
The architecture.
Absolutely.
They play with wood.
But that's what I'm saying. He's searching.
Yeah.
He's searching. He's trying to find something that will make the brand.
And architecture always adds to that search.
It's important. We live in it. We can't neglect it.
Yeah. Augustus, what would you say is the difference between designing a building for functionality and designing a building for cultural expression?
A building for functionality. I think it's about the budget. If you're designing for functionality, in most cases, you're trying to, like for example, if you have to build mass housing, in the case where we're looking at the teeming numbers of rural urban migration, how the cities are growing, how we don't have adequate infrastructure to take people in, your thoughts are very functional. However, even in there, you know, an architect must build something that will still create dignity and inspire. So he shouldn't totally leave the issue and just build blocks. And the famed architect Alejandro Aravinas has done that in what do you call it? In Latin America, if I'm not wrong, in trying to create these buildings that dignify even the poor. So that is there. You can build functionally, but I would still posit
and
that
I think
there is the need to search for a soul.
Francis Carey.
Absolutely. Carey tries to create dignity in his approach in Gando and those who studied it. When you are building for cultural expression, surely there must be a budget. Most people do this in museum spaces. And surely you are sitting on large funds to do that, where buildings really can be played with and so on and so forth. Do you have the money to do that? Don't you have the money to do that? It's a money thing. So both of them have their place, I think. But I would say that for me as a practicing architect, there's nothing that's only functional.
Takes me to my next question.
There's nothing that's really functional.
How do architects balance practicality and functionality, especially in a resource-constrained environment like Africa?
It's a nice question. My answer to that is, how do you elicit magic from a line? How do you elicit magic from a straight line?
Magic.
Yeah, how do you elicit magic from a straight line? Let me explain. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
Mm.
If I go this way, it's long, but I'm still going to the same location. So what we are discussing is we don't have money. Why? We have to be practical and we have to be functional. And therefore, how does that line elicit magic? How does that straight wall, how does that cube elicit greatness? That is where architecture begins to play. In that simplicity, what do you do in the detail to make that more than just a wall? That's where the discussion is. So for me, that is so. We need to balance. We need to still be practical in an African situation. It takes me back to my visit to Morocco for the first time, Marrakesh, and I'm happy that in the recent news, now you can go to Morocco without visa free. So surely I'll be making another appearance in Morocco. You realize that when you are landing in Marrakesh, it's a city of monochrome. It's called the Red City. Everything is one color. You would think it will be boring. I would urge every Ghanaian, this is free advertisement for the Moroccan people, they should go to Marrakesh. It is truly a beautiful city.
And what adds to that detail that doesn't make it boring?
The buildings are mostly, very cubist in nature, and people would even posit that the whole Mediterranean approach influenced the modern movement in many ways when you read Corbusier and so on and so forth. So very cubist in nature, but it's the carpets, the rugs, it's the woodwork, it's the craftsmanship that begins to make these buildings amazing. And so there's a lot to learn from there. How do we build very simply, using very simple methods to elevate space? And that's a discussion, that's a serious discussion. It's not, and one that we must all participate in. But that is the work of the architect in the country. Interesting conversation so far. It's been insightful, and I'm happy to have you here, and even on more episodes. I'm happy to. I'm happy to share, because I keep, I talk a lot in the office, and the reason why I support ArchiTalker is I feel that I think the architects have a lot of knowledge to share in whatever shape or form, and that we should talk more. Because there is a benefit to the larger society when we expose people to what they otherwise don't even think about.
Augustus Richardson.
Mr. York.
What inspired you to be an architect? What keeps you passionate about architecture?
What inspired me to be an architect? I believe in those who are also called to be architects. So if you've read a bit of the history, and when you read the history, then you're able to place yourself. I went to primary school at Northridge Lyceum. It was in class 3. I remember class 3. My brother says class 4, but I think class 3. When my twin brother, Julius, Dr. Levi Ankra, he's at Kolebu Plastic Surgery, and my friend Eugene Van Dyke sat under a tree at lunchtime, and the question came, when you grow up, what do you want to be? And for the life of me, I answered first. I said, I want to be an architect. And I was in class 3. I've wondered, why did I say that? Because in my close family, there isn't an architect. My mother, was...
Not to cut you short, so where did you hear of who an architect is?
I'm even wondering where I heard it from. Maybe
it was divine.
Through my readings, maybe. But there was nobody close to me.
That was an architect.
But my mother, and my mother's side of the family is very creative. They've been tailors, seamstresses. My mother used to sell cloth. Very creative woman, used to make beads. So my dad would always say that creative side wasn't from his side. So he posits it that it's also in the system. That,
it's innate.
Some of it is innate. So I mentioned that without understanding it. And interestingly, the only thing that challenged me being an architect was being a pilot. Did you know this?
No, but I wanted to be a pilot too.
Okay.
And I was running away from maths, and I said, I'm just going to draw, so I'll be an architect. Mine was class 6.
Then you made mistakes and realized architecture has more mathematics.
Yeah, I got into my first year in architecture school doing maths for architects. Yeah. I'm like, this is just like elective maths.
The only other thing that came in the way was going to pilot school and being a pilot, because I just love the way pilots, flew planes around and the way they looked. And when you're young, those things. Yeah. But I remember somewhere in my mind, I said, but I read about Lord Norman Foster, who is an architect but also flies. But I haven't seen pilots who are architects. So I was like, you know what? Do the architecture. Later when you make money, you can always go to flying school and learn. It's like driving a car, right? Yeah. Hopefully I'll do that at some point in my life.
Definitely will.
But that was for me more a calling. And as I grew towards it, I kept yearning more and more for it. I was very good in mathematics. I won't say still am because I didn't follow that path. I could draw naturally, which was a good thing, but I learned a lot more drawing when I went to school, studying Francis D. Ching, some of these books. And, one thing led to another. But the one thing, though, about me particularly, I like to share is I had a dream which just cemented the fact that it's all architecture and nothing else. If you ask me, people have asked me, if you came back again, what would you like to be? And I'll tell you, still being an architect. It will not change. I had a dream, and in that dream, I believe I was a ghost. In a sense, I was dead. And I was in a cemetery. Now, so that's the cemetery, and you can see in the distance a black cenotaph. And it attracted me. I know I was not alive because I wasn't walking. I was floating towards it. So almost, and when I got there, normally people have their names and he lived from. There were no names that I could see. But when I looked closer, there was an etching in the stone, the black stone, architect. And then I woke up. So some of these things you are called. Mine is a calling. And something that I've followed and comes to me very naturally. I will be no other thing than an architect, something I'm very proud of. And I try to use that to seek out others who have the same calling. Because I believe that those who care enough about the environment and creation will make an impact on our society, and we need to look out for those people. God gives us those talents. And when he gives us those talents, we are not supposed to mess around with it. We are supposed to use it to glorify him, to glorify the environment and so on and so forth. So you really, for me though, it's more of a calling than just something I'm doing, to make ends meet or an option along the way. No, it's not.
Thank you so much for responding to the call. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to be here.
God will be proud of you. Because, you've contributed much to the landscape in Accra, Tema, Ghana as a whole. One thing you always say that inspires us, that we are changing the landscape one building.
That is the maxim of Mobius architecture. Exactly. You can't do it all.
Which I am proud to have trained under your leadership and all. It's part of your training has inspired to bring this about. I'm happy to hear that, York, and that's what I try to do with every student who comes to, because it's a passion, we impact, and we try to reach out to a lot more people who want to make an impact in the built environment. The built environment is not for one person. The creation of architecture is not the work of just an architect. It's the partnership between a visionary client and a masterful architect. This is the two that creates what a building must become in setting its path. Once you set the path, you are able to then make the country become, I'd like to use Krabeshe. This is what we are working towards. Interesting. Now my last question to you. With all this being said, with all this being done, with all your work on earth and your walk upon the lands of Ghana, what legacy are you trying to leave as an architect?
What guides me, interestingly, is a book, a 20th anniversary book that I chanced upon in my first year of running my own practice, Mobius Architecture. And just to guide me at the time, I chanced upon a book, Glenn Howell's Architects. It's a UK firm who was celebrating their 20th anniversary, and they published the book. Interestingly, in 2 years, I'll be 20.
Congratulations.
Thank you. In
Yeah.
advance, thank you. And in that book, they sort of featured buildings they had done. And I remember looking at it and saying to myself, wow, that's this. If in 20 years you can boast of even one of these type of buildings that's in properly crafted, properly detailed, properly thought through icons, then you would have done the job. And so that is what guides me in my work. In fact, because of that, every project receives attention from me. I'm not doing a lot of work. I'm not planning that. It's just every project must receive attention. God created man, and he was particular. In creating even all the animals and the plants, he was very particular. In man, he says, let us make man in our image. And so it's very important that philosophy, concept plays a strong part in whatever it is. You never know which one it's going to be. So then all of them must receive good attention to create great buildings. And I hope that those buildings begin to have a discussion about what the possible ways are for us as a people. And I think the bigger work is all the people who have intended and shared these words with, and now by your platform, even reaching out to a much larger audience to say, how do we build this place called Ghana? How do we make Ghana a greater place? Hopefully, maybe that will be what we can contribute. I don't know about legacy, but I know about contribution.
That's legacy enough.
Well, then I want to contribute.
Continue. Thank you so much, Augustus, for
it is my pleasure
being here. We are so much inspired. It's been an insightful conversation, and we hope to have you again. And we will, because
I look forward to it.
Our next episode, we seek to understand what the history of architecture in Ghana is. And again, nobody else is qualified than Augustus Richardson to speak about it.
Oh no, history. You have a lot of people.
We're gonna have you here again.
I will suggest other people to you to bring on.
That's all right.
There's a large.
That's all right. We'll love to. And I mean, in other times, it could be a panel where we talk to a few.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much once again, Augustus.
My pleasure being here.
It was nice having you.